the dawn breaks and then the morning sets the sun high in the sky. Who would hide from heaven's glory? Who would pass the challenge by? La 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 la.
There's a morning for every nation when the sun's high in the sky. There's a time for every people to affirm their destiny. La 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 la.
Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past a new tomorrow, grace for all who understand. There's a morning for every nation when the sun's high in the sky. There's a time for every people to affirm their destiny. La 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 la. Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past a new tomorrow, waits for all who understand. La 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 la. Leave the past a new tomorrow, waits for all who understand.
This reading is a New Year's message from Yogananda Ji from 1950. We have quite a few New Year messages from him because he would send these out to people. And this one is, what he says is, resolve this coming year to appreciate the value of time. For how is it possible to solve all the mysteries of the soul in one short lifespan unless we make the most of each year? Very few know how much can be accomplished when each day is used wisely and economically. Without realizing the value of immortal time, which God has given us, whole lifetimes may ebb away before we wake up. All knowledge comes from the inner source, from the soul eternal, without limitation. But that doesn't mean we can afford to waste opportunities when God's priceless treasures are waiting to be received. How to quicken your evolution? By consciously condensing all your experiences through the power of concentration and focusing your attention at one point. Condensation of action means quick and efficient performance of duties that ordinarily would take a long time. Having gained entrance to this vast school of life, resolve to make the most of all it can teach you. Worldly education starts with books and external methods, but the student of self-realization starts by increasing his receptivity. Faithfully practice your meditation techniques, for your spiritual progress depends upon the receptivity of your mind, brain cells, and spinal column, and the grace of our God and Gurus. The infinite source of all knowledge lies within. When the mind is receptive, you can more readily conquer your problems. Calmness, concentration, condensation of experience, and regular practice of meditation will enable you to master your own destiny. My deep prayer for this new year is that your steadfast efforts will find fruition in ever-increasing happiness. God's blessings, Paramahansa Yogananda.
And this is from The New Path by Swamiji, and it describes Swamiji's first celebration of the New Year with Master. On New Year's Eve in 1948, we gathered in the main chapel for a midnight meditation, again led by Master, referring to the Christmas meditation also was led by Master. At one point during the proceedings, he beat a large gong, softly, then with gradually increasing volume, alternately decreasing and increasing the volume in waves. Imagine this as the sound of Om, he told us, spreading outward to infinity. At the same instant, 100 miles south in Encinitas, another group of disciples was meditating in the main room of the hermitage. They too heard the gong as Master was striking it. One of the monks later told me it was as though it was being struck in the hallway just outside the room we were in. The meditation that followed at Mount Washington was enthralling. Midnight came. Suddenly, waves of noise sweeping up from the city below and inward from the surrounding neighborhood. Factory whistles, car horns, shouts as countless celebrants ushered in the new year. The door of a neighboring house opened and a voice with a tone almost of desperation shouted into the night, "Happy New Year!" What a contrast between the frantic, emotional, almost febrile excitement in the sounds that were being unleashed by thousands of celebrants around us, and the calm, expanding soul joy we experienced in ourselves in the sublime peace of our little chapel. And how blessed, I reflected, how wonderful it was to be in this holy place at the feet of my divine Guru. I prayed that the new year would bring me an ever-deepening awareness of God's love. We also would like to play for you a short New Year's Eve message from Swamiji. This was, do you mind putting the TV back here? This was in 2007 that Swamiji gave a short satsang on New Year's Day, and it was right after right after a concert of his music. So he begins by talking about the music.
You know, when I listen to this music, I don't think of it as mine. It was given to me. And all I had to do was listen, and then it was there. I had to do more than listen. I had to say, I want a melody or a song on this particular subject which says these particular things. Once I had a clear idea, then I said, God, you do it. And he did. So many people think that if you give up the consciousness of ego, then how can you do anything? The truth is you can do much, much more, because then he can do it through you. And he's created the whole universe. There's nothing he cannot do. Whereas if we think that we are doing it, what we can put out is very limited and always thin. I've noticed so many times a composer, for example, will have a beautiful inspiration for about 5 notes, and then suddenly it falls apart. And the reason his piece of music is considered beautiful is because of those 5 notes. And then the ego comes and says, what do I want? How do I want to go? Do I want to go this way, that way? And it kills it. Well, today we are at the new year. And it's a wonderful opportunity to decide what we want to do with our lives from now on. There is a saying, today is the first day of the rest of your life. And we don't often think that way, but that's why we're given a chance with every new incarnation to just rethink it and think, what did we do wrong? How can we improve? The thought with which you die is what will determine your next life. Your last thought is your final exam for this life. It will be the sum total of how you have lived. But usually people die thinking, oh, if only I had had this, or if only I had that. And let's face it, nothing ever gives you what you want. Nothing. It's really very intriguing when you think that this whole show of Maya is based on Dvaita, duality. And for every upward wave of success, there has to be a downward wave of suffering and sorrow and failure. There has to be joy and sorrow balanced. And the sum total of all of our striving for who knows how many millions of incarnations has to be zero. It's sort of a frightening thought that we work so hard for nothing. And yet that really is what it's all about. And so it's very good for us to think not only, well, next lifetime I'll do better. We can start today. And this is why New Year's resolutions are a good thing. Because don't make too many. Just make one or two and keep them quiet, but make them severely and strongly and say, this is what I will do this year. Many times, if you want to overcome some habit, some failing in yourself, something you want to become better at, whatever it is, don't try for don't think about the whole year even. Think about today, for 1 hour I'm going to do it. And then if you can do it every day for 1 hour, then increase it to 2 hours. And then 3 hours. You know, one time I was worried because I used to be very sort of proud of my intellect. It was stupid, but I was that. And my guru tried to get me to to get over that, and I wanted to, but it's not easy to overcome these habits. And so I said, sir, it's so difficult. I want to do it. He said, habits can be overcome in a day. It's all a question of concentration of mind. And I found this was true, that when I really concentrated a different way, it was altogether different. Those habits are not you. The war of Kurukshetra between the Kauravas and the Pandavas is within every human being. We are all a huge nation of qualities. And some of those qualities fight against our own happiness. They are the Kauravas. Some of those qualities fight for our enlightenment. They are the Pandavas. And we must see at the end of every day, have the Pandavas won or have the Kauravas got a victory? And every day we should think back, what have I done? And any mistake that you make, just sort of build yourself a bonfire, like a Havan Kund, and throw all your mistakes and all your bad qualities and attachments into that. If you can do that every day, you'll find before very long you feel very free. And as every incarnation is a new opportunity, so every year is an opportunity. Every day is an opportunity. Every breath is an opportunity. In fact, if you want to overcome a bad quality or bad habit or attitude in your own mind, one good way to do it is inhale and make a strong affirmation here at the point between the eyebrows, then exhale and feel with that exhalation that you are getting rid of all the bad qualities, the bad habit. This is a technique which actually works. And I have seen that it does work. I've had a long enough life to test these things and try them out. They work wonderfully. Just put enough willpower into it. Don't let your mind say, oh yeah, I've tried that so many times, what's the use? No, you can do it. You'll have to do it sooner or later. Why wait incarnations? Why wait years? Why wait days? Why not do it right now? As my guru said, this is a quality in America that I like. This thought, eventually, why not now? He said that is what you should think of all the time. Now, I have just finished writing a book that may be as important as the Gita. It's called Revelations of Christ, proclaimed by Paramahansa Yogananda. And it's been an exciting adventure. I have taken on 1,000 myths. And people who like those myths are likely to lynch me. I'm going to be having a launch in Los Angeles. Nirmala thought we could have lunch before the launch. And I said yes, and then after the lunch we can have the lynch. But it does take on a lot of myths, but all in the name of clearing the air. It's sort of between an old yoga and a new yoga. And this too is a new age, a new era. We're living in a new era. And this is something I've explained in that book too, that it's no longer Kali Yuga as most Hindus think. That was a myth that was created at a certain time during the depths of Kali Yuga. But in fact, we have entered into Dwapara. And the yugas are not 235,000 years. They're in fact, Kali Yuga is 12,000 years, descending 12,000 years, ascending. Dwapara, 2,400 years, Treta Yuga, 3,600 years, Satya Yuga, 4,800 years. This is something which I'd be willing to discuss it with you, but this is not my purpose today to go into that. However, what I do want to say is you can make this year a new yuga. So let's think of that. I don't want to talk a long time, and this is why they very graciously offered to sing for me as well as for you, so that I wouldn't have to talk too long, and let's have a nice open house and have some tea upstairs. Happy New Year.
Well, such a joy as always to see Swamiji, and it feels just like he's reaching out of the TV and right into our hearts. New Year's Eve and New Year's Day are always a time of reflection, and I think part of it has to do with it being the end of the year. The energy naturally moves inward. It naturally sort of has us pause. And the new year also feels like a new opportunity. It makes us feel like, okay, I can start again. So often there can be a temptation, I don't know if for you, but certainly for me, of you sort of look back at the last year and kind of go, oh, and then try to start off with the new year and kind of go, okay, this year is going to be different. And then we sort of reflect that, I thought that at the beginning of last year also. And, I thought that might just be me, and then I read so many of Master's New Year's letters, as Dharmini was mentioning. There are many. And so many of them begin with, we stand amidst the ashes of the past year and all its disasters. And some of these were written during the wartime, so you can understand that. But still, and we will now focus on the phoenix of the new year, which will rise from the ashes, and it just echoes that message of, okay, this year we're going to do better. And obviously we should have that affirmation, but I would say that we should also have as a consideration that, this past year, if you think about it, I'm sure it didn't go so badly. In fact, and of course I'm just speaking when we look at ourselves. And I don't know the lives of all of you, obviously, and some of you're just coming for the first or second time. But when I look at, for those of you whom I do know, even knowing what little I do, I can say, take it from me, you had a good year. If we look at the year in terms of long rhythms, when we're new on the spiritual path, it's easy to sort of look at every day, every week, every month, and go, okay, I'm doing better. Oh, I'm not doing as well as I was. I thought I got over that habit, and here it is again, getting a hold of me. And I had this attitude on the spiritual path in the beginning too. And one thing when I spoke to a number of people about it, Jyotish, Jaya, Haridas, Swamiji, they all said the same thing. Think in terms of long rhythms. And I had to kind of, go to a dictionary and kind of look up long rhythms. My nature was not very interested in long rhythms. I was interested in instant results, instant gratification. I resolved to do this, I've done it, or I haven't done it, okay, I didn't do it, so I failed forever. This perfectionistic thinking that doesn't give myself even a second chance to say, well, if you made a mistake and you don't like how things turned out, guess what? That's called learning. How else will you learn? I was saying to myself, unless you did something and moved outside of where you wanted to be, so you learned. How else do you learn? And if you never have an experience like that, of disappointment or of failure or of regret, then it means you haven't been challenging yourself enough. You've just been staying in a safe, comfortable orbit. Maybe just sitting in the shower all day long. Okay, nice. This is good. I know what to do here. What's the point of that? Nothing. There's no learning. There's no growth in that. And so, also that's important to remember, when we worry too much about others and their struggles, they are learning. And so, let's pray for them, but let's also give them the space and the sort of our prayers that they do learn and learn well. But they need to take their own journey of learning. You can't sit and do someone's maths exam for them and then hand it in, although I'm sure many children might apply to the parents. Can you just fill it in and hand it in? Sign my name. But the thing too to keep in mind is there's so much good if you look at the long rhythm. Lord Buddha said if you want to evaluate your spiritual progress, compare yourself to how you were 10 years ago. And I trust that many of you would feel that you would come out on the positive side of that ledger. But you can even look at what you've accomplished in this past year. And all the things that we, for example, have done together. Some of you I know took Kriya initiation for the first time this year. I mean, if you did that, you can just call the rest of the year. It doesn't matter. That was enough to be in the positive for the whole year. But obviously, if you practice it, which you are, if you go deeper with it, which you are, then it's all the better. But also, some of you took meditation classes for the first time. Some of you went on pilgrimage to Master's home in Calcutta, to Bangalore to see another Ananda centers, to see Ananda Delhi and Gorgan up north, to see Jyotish and Devi. Jyotish and Devi came here. I mean, there's been a lot. Actually, if you just look back, that all happened this year. Jai and Dhyanaji came in January of this year in the, for the next 45 minutes this year. And I mean, that feels like a long time ago. And if you think of all that's happened since then, also the free lectures, but more than that, more than even events, though events are very important, just the growing sense of community, of friendship that we see blossoming in so many of you. And we feel it too. And that was interestingly Swamiji's reading from Living Wisely, Living Well. Develop a sense of community with others. With others we can serve them. And we can also give joy to them and then receive joy from them too. It's God smiling at God through these windows, the eyes, the windows of the soul. And anything that you've done in the past that you regret, just don't worry about it. Just leave it. We're going to have a fire ceremony and also a purification ceremony that will also be outward expressions, but also these are not just symbols. The throwing of the rice and ghee, the burning of the purification slip will explain it if you're not familiar with it. These aren't just symbolic. Master said if you believe the ceremony has power, if you do it with faith, you will see that it has power. So that's a real thing. But also, it's important, as Sister Gyanamata, Master's most advanced woman disciple, said, count your blessings, skip the rest. What about skip the rest? Just skip the rest. And if you think about it, there have been a lot of blessings that you have and have had. In fact, even sometimes we feel badly that we haven't measured up to our goals or our sense of where we should be on the spiritual path. Be glad you're on the spiritual path. Be glad that you know which way is up, which way is forward. You have a sense of, even if you're frustrated that you didn't do what you ought to do, be glad that you know what you ought to do. Just think of your life before the path. And I don't mean it was all dark and dismal, but I just mean when we get a sense of spiritual guidance, whatever that is, it's very encouraging and relieving because we can finally feel that we're making progress and we're not just running in circles, or we're not just wondering, what am I supposed to do? Still, those periods of testing may come. And if you've had one of those periods of testing, you can say, I survived. That's a huge accomplishment. Sometimes the only grade that you get for the test is pass or fail. And if you are still standing, you have passed, and that's great. When I was a school teacher, there was another school teacher there who was starting out, and I just said, listen, if you can survive each day, then call it a success. And then after she started teaching, she said, okay, I understand. My first few months of teaching, I would come home after the day and just pass out, try to aim for the bed, and just go down, because it was so draining at first, because you have to keep your energy like this to match the energy of the children, to exceed the energy of the children. Otherwise, you're always going, stop it, stop it, stop it. Shh, come on, everybody, and you can't do it from down there. You have to do it from up here. It's good to meet life that way. If you're in a situation where life is feeling a little bit too big, you just make yourself bigger. And, shouting and screaming in this is smaller. It's not bigger. But if you energize, meditate, pray, Master, here we go, for better or worse, come into it with bigger energy, you'll find the situation is therefore relatively smaller. And remember also that even to be here means that your past lives and so on have been very good. For you to even be in this situation now, they have to be. You can't just stumble into this by accident. You have to be worthy of it. And I don't mean worthy meaning pure enough, because we're all worthy of help. God is wanting to help us. It's not He who holds us back until we're ready. It's we who hold Him back until we're ready. Because we say, I need help, and I want help, and I know you want to help me. That sense of confidence and trust has to be there too. We were watching a movie at the Christmas party, a celebration of Christmas called The Sound of Music, and at one scene there's a song which I don't remember the exact words, but basically because these two people are so happy to have found each other and are so appreciative of the other, it's a romantic scene, that they sing, I must have done something in my past or childhood, I must have done something good. And so if you're sitting here tonight, choosing to celebrate New Year's in a spiritual way with God, if you're here as seriously on the spiritual path, seriously saying, I want to grow, and I want to grow in God, then you must have done something good. And so as every year is a new incarnation, this past year, whatever it was, joys and success, sorrows and failure, again, learning, then it's all to the good. And similarly with past lives too. Just say, listen, thank you, past life selves, to have gotten me on the path to where I am now. Just be grateful, and with reason. It's not just wishful thinking. And so, but having said all that, let's enter into the new year with more courage, more enthusiasm, a deepening of we're in the right direction, and all we have to do is keep going individually and together. So, God bless you.